Hi everybody and welcome back to lecture. This is going to be our third and our final lecture focused on employment for the semester. So we have a few more research lectures to go and you're probably thinking, oh, great, okay. But either way, we're finished with our employment lectures as of today. So I just want to spend a few minutes discussing interviews, and this is not going to be a very long lecture at all. But we've gone through the resume process already. We have our cover letters. You guys have found possible job openings for me, and now we need to discuss the interview process. So I can't comment on every company or every agency's hiring process, but for the most part, what you should expect if you've never been on a job interview before, what you should probably expect is just a little bit of time in a get to know you situation. We'll talk about your employment history. I'll have you elaborate further on some of the things that were found in your resume, and then I'll start asking you a series of questions that focus on career skills, what you can add to the company or to the agency, and then most often, especially in an agency type situation, the employer might give you a, if this was the situation, what would you do in response to the situation you find yourself in? Police departments typically have more extensive interviewing techniques, and usually those interview techniques also coincide with physical and psychological evaluations to make sure that you are a suitable candidate for the job, and there's a bunch of testing requirements as well, but some of the more basic interview functions are still included. So what I wanted to do was go over a few different recommendations for how you can give yourself the best opportunity to get the job, because already if you have an interview, you did good on the resume, you did good on the cover letter, you did what I told you to do in trying to tailor yourself to fit this particular employer, and now you have to dazzle them with your personality when you're in the actual interview. So similar to what you did for your resume, you want to keep conducting research on the company, on the employer, on the agency, to learn a little bit more about what this company or organization does, right? Your specific job opportunity, what is it that you as an individual would be doing for this company. See if you can find anybody who also has this job, see what some of their duties are, how fulfilling they find their work, things like that, right? You should try and understand your employer, understand the requirements of the job, and make sure that you feel like you are the right fit for that employer. So let's say like you were interviewing at Walmart, right? One of the best ways to be able to, and you can't obviously do this for agencies or police departments, right? But one of the best ways, especially with retail, if you're going to go interview there, what you want to do is actually go to a Walmart, right? The best way to research a store is, or an organization, if you are able to, is to actually go there, right? If you've never been familiar with what Walmart has to offer, go inside a Walmart, walk up and down the aisle, see the different products, see the way that the employees interact with the customers, even talk to some of the employees, right? Most of the time people are pretty open about questions that you might have about their organization or what people do for a living, right? And talk to people and conduct your research that way. Also, if the company or the organization has a website, make sure you're going through and you're trying to find as much relevant information that might help you in the interview process. The more prepared you are, the easier it's going to be to answer questions about why you feel like you're a good fit for this company. Why do you feel like you could contribute something to this agency or organization? If you go in blind, what you're going to end up doing, especially if they hit you with a question that you're not prepared for, you're going to be, oh God, how do I answer this? How do I get started, right? You're going to be floundering and sort of looking for a response, and the person who is conducting the interview is going to know that, right? So what if I just came into lecture and I did nothing to prepare? And I just said, I'm going to wing it today, right? Let's talk about this. And I just am a big rambling mess. That would not instill confidence in you that I knew what I was doing or that I was prepared in an adequate manner to be your instructor, right? But even though I'm just sort of loosely talking to you, I have a general outline of all the things that I want to talk about with you guys. I am prepared for the topic of the day. So that's the sort of thing that you still want to do. you want to make sure that you're prepared enough that you're not memorizing your answers, but you are, how do I say, you're not memorizing your answers, but you know enough about the company that you can recall facts and things off the top of your head, right? The next thing you want to do sort of ties into this idea of preparation is thinking about some common interview questions and sort of preparing responses. If you know that they're going to ask you about how you would be a good fit for this company, prepare a response. Practice in front of the mirror. Oh, well, sir, madam, I feel like I would be an excellent fit for this company because I have the relevant job skills X, Y, and Z, and your company does A, B, and C, and those are a direct tie-in. I'm very passionate about this topic, and your company works hard to promote this issue, right? So you're trying to find things that coincide with what the company or the organization is doing and showing them how you would be a relevant piece to that puzzle, right? You can also ask the hiring manager or the person who's going to conduct the interview some information about what to expect. Maybe not necessarily the exact questions, but you should be entitled to know who's going to be conducting the interview, right? Is it one person? Will it be a group setting? Will I meet with one person one-on-one and then you'll send me around to different members of the agency or the company, right? Will I be meeting with multiple people throughout the day? And that will have a bearing on how prepared and how time consuming is not the right word, but how daunting a process this might be. You have to learn to pace yourself if you're going to be talking to all these people, so you're not burning yourself out. Right? So as you're preparing, one of the things, as I said to you already, you might want to practice in the mirror, but one of the things that always comes in handy, especially in an interview section, is putting things into story form. So while you don't want to have your answers memorized verbatim, you want to be able to at least have sort of a linear track or a linear focus as to what you might be talking about, right? So if you're talking about your educational experience and some of the things that you did work-wise while you were at UT Tyler, you could talk about how you did these internships, you took all of these classes, you feel like they've prepared you for this moment in time, so on and so forth, and just have sort of this linear trajectory of how your answers might develop. The other thing that is really useful, especially for individuals who are new or fresh to the job market, is to consider formulating maybe a 1 or 2 minute, what we call an elevator speech. So for the amount of time it would take you to go up and down the elevator, that's the amount of time that you have to talk to someone and inspire them and make them feel like you are a confident, proficient individual who wants this job. So consider as you're gearing up for the interview process, just this little blurb or this little spiel about yourself that packs the most vital, relevant information in the most condensed, short space, right? Okay. So we talked a little bit about how to prepare and how to research. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the actual day you're there. So whenever you get up in the morning to prepare to go to your interview, you always want to pick out an outfit, and for men and women, you want to find something that is business appropriate, but also isn't super overdressed for what you're trying to apply to, right? So let's say you're interviewing for a job with the United States Marshal Service. You probably want to go in there in a full suit and tie if you're a man, or a full business suit if you're a woman. You want to wear something that is suitable office wear because that's the type of job you're going to be doing. If you're applying for the Forestry Service or Fish and Wildlife, something to that effect, you probably don't need a full suit, but you could probably get away with a nice button-down shirt or a nice blouse and a pair of slacks, right? It's appropriate for the venue that you're going to. But always remember that it's better to be overdressed than it is to be underdressed. Under no circumstances should you wear jeans to an interview unless you know, for some odd reason, you know that that is appropriate. But you should always wear at least a pair of dress slacks to keep things looking professional looking. But no jeans. Please don't go in jeans. So always overdress rather than underdress, and always make sure that you're keeping the crazy to a minimum. And I say that in a nice way, but you don't want to go in there and be so full of color and so full of jewelry and your hair's all over the place and you're just full of your regular personality. That's great. Like, I fully advocate being as colorful and festive as you want to be in your regular life. Everybody's an individual and everybody should dress the way they want to dress. However, if you go into a job interview and you're wearing all this crazy stuff and you're wearing so much jewelry that you're rattling and all kinds of stuff when you talk, that's the only thing they're going to remember about you, right? And you're going to be so distracting to the potential employer that they're not going to take you seriously, right? There's plenty of time to be an individual and dress the way you want to dress later on down the line, but tone it down for the interview. You want to look as professional as possible without being distracted. You want the employer to remember you. You don't want the employer to remember your clothing choices for the day. The other thing is that if you are a smoker, try not to smoke right before you go in there, because anymore there's more non-smokers than there are smokers. So don't try and smoke right before you go in so that you smell of smoke. Don't eat right before you go in, and especially don't eat something that's very oniony or very garlicky as you're going in to meet with these people. Or don't go to a restaurant where the food, we all know that place, right? Like, there's that one restaurant out there that the food sort of clings to you after you leave and you can just smell it on your person. Don't go to that restaurant for lunch right before your job interview, right? Always make sure that you have good hygiene practices. You maybe have just a little bit of cologne. Always wear deodorant, guys. But like, don't douse yourself in cologne or perfume. That's the other thing. If I have to, like, if I can smell you from across my desk, that's probably not the best first impression you're trying to make on somebody. So just sort of tone everything down just a little bit so that you're remembered for you and not as the really super smelly guy, right? Nobody wants to be that guy. Okay, so you're all dressed, you're ready to go, you don't smell. So make sure you give yourself a little extra time. There might always be a traffic accident. Traffic is heavy that day. You got lost. You can't find the building. You're at the building. You can't find the office. Give yourselves an extra few minutes just to get there and be there on time. Because if you can't show up for your interview on time, that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me that you're going to be able to show up for work on time, right? So there's really no excuse barring just a major catastrophe for you being late. So I always tell people, try and get to an interview about 15 minutes ahead of time, and then that allows you to get settled, right? You found the location, you're there, you're waiting, you're prompt, you're on time, and now you can just sit back in the waiting room and just calm yourself, steady your nerves, and just get your thoughts in order before the interview starts, so you're not all frazzled. Like, I in particular am one of those people that the closer I get to being somewhere, the nerves start to creep in. So if I can just have a few minutes to sit by myself, collect my thoughts, take a deep breath, I'll do better at whatever it is that I'm doing. If I'm presenting, I'm lecturing, whatever it may be, I just need a second to collect myself so I'm not rushed and frazzled. And if you're the same way, don't push yourself right up against that starting time, that appointment time. Give yourself a minute to breathe. Okay? The day of, when you are going to your interview, always make sure you have extra everything. They're going to have your resume on file, but what happens if it's you and me in the interview and then all of a sudden my colleague comes in? Make sure you have extra copies of everything. Your resume, make sure you have extra copies of your reference list. And if you need any other types of paperwork, like let's say the interviewer asks you to bring something specific, have extra copies of that. If you are former military, make sure you have extra copies of your discharge paperwork, things like that you'll need to provide your potential employer with. It's always great to have those things on hand so you don't have to have somebody go run and make a couple extra copies. You have it right on hand there. And then finally, make sure that you're prepared to take notes, jot down little thoughts or ideas. It shows that you're interested and you're engaged. You want to take these thoughts home later to think about them, and turn your phones off, okay? I have gone through interviews where I've been on this side of the table and people's phone rings in the middle of an interview. Like, what is so important that you can't talk to me one-on-one for this amount of time and you have to have your phone with you, right? So no text message, no phone call is more important than what we're doing right here. And it shows that you're respectful of your employer's time by giving them your full attention in this process, right? The phone call can wait. You can talk to whoever when you get out of here and tell them you got a good job, right? Okay, so we talked about wardrobe. We talked about all the things you need to do before you get there. When you're in the interview, you need to make sure that they feel as though you are a confident person, even if you have to fake it, right? Fake it until you make it. But body language is a huge component of the interview process. When you're in an interview, talk to them face to face, look them in the eye. Don't sit here and just kind of like give answers and cross your arms and play with your hair or chew on gum or chew on your pen or play with your fingers. Like, don't do any of that stuff. Look me in the face, look me in the eye, and tell me why I need to hire you. If you have confidence, that's half the battle. If you say things enthusiastically, you say things in a very strong, evocative sense, right? I'm more willing to believe you than if you're sitting here telling me the truth, but you're just like, you won't look at me and you're just sort of crouched down and all that kind of stuff, right? So speak clearly, speak confidently, convince me that I need to hire you. Convince me that my company, that my agency is not going to be as effective if you're not my employee. Right? So if you are prepared for this interview the way I told you to prepare, there's no reason in the world that you shouldn't be confident in speaking to just one other person. I know it's a nerve-wracking process sometimes. And I know that when you first start interviewing, it's the last thing you want to do, right? I just wish that somebody would recognize my talent for what it is and would not have to make me go through this process. In an ideal world, that's how it would work, but that's not the ideal world. And we all have to go through the interview process sometimes. So the more prepared you are, the more confident you're going to be, and the more likely it is that you're going to walk away at the end of the day with the job. Okay? So the other last tip that I have for you guys, when you go into an interview, most of the time you expect the interviewer to be the one who asks questions. But I want you guys, as you're going through the interview process, to think about questions that you could ask the potential employer, right? And even if that employer has answered pretty much everything that you needed answered, ask the questions anyway, right? And don't let okay, so this has to be emphasized. Don't ask questions about salary, sick time, paid vacations, any of that stuff. All of that can be worked out once they make you the offer. The questions that I want you guys to ask focus more on expectations of the job, work management. Maybe there's a hierarchy of authority. Is this a project that we'll work nights and weekends on? I'm willing to do that. I just want to clarify things with you first. What sorts of machinery or tools or operating systems do you guys use to complete X? Anything like that that is sort of relevant to the work, even if it's been briefly touched upon, ask the employer to elaborate on it or ask some follow-up questions. And those are the type of things that really make you stand out to the employer. Right? At the end of the interview process, if the employer says, well, do you have any questions for me? And you say, no, I'm good, right? It sort of makes it seem as though you weren't engaged in the interview process, and you could have been the whole way through, right? But I've only met you this one time, and if that's the only response you have for me, it sort of makes me feel as though you're not as engaged with me as I am with you. Or maybe this is not the job you want. Maybe this is not the company that you thought it was. But if you can sit there and you can ask maybe 2-3 questions that further go into depth or into detail about what the company does or what this job entails, It really shows that you are engaged. It shows that you're interested, and it sort of shows the employer that you're more interested in this position as a potential career rather than just a stepping stone for money so you can move on to the next job opportunity, right? Excuse me. And that question is very apparent when you ask about salary right off the bat. Salary is important and we should know about it because obviously you're working to get paid, right? But once you get that job offer, that's the time for negotiation on salary or questions about paid sick leave, all of that stuff. Not here when we're trying to get to know one another right now. Okay, so then the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about is the idea of looking good on paper versus interviewing well. And a lot of times people come across very strongly in their resumes and in their cover letters, and when they show up for the interview, it's sort of lackluster. I can't advocate for myself. I struggle talking about my qualifications, or I struggle talking about how great I am. I don't want to come across as arrogant, so I really tone things down because I don't want to make myself seem that way. So sometimes those people don't get the job because they don't interview well. So sometimes, even though I'm the better qualified applicant on paper, you're a better interviewee than me, right? You can advocate for yourself more strongly than I can. You're the one who's more likely to get the job. So the qualified applicant might look good, but if you don't know how to dazzle them with your personality, with your charm, it's less likely that you're going to get the job. And this is a difficult thing for people sometimes to struggle with, especially if you are more of an introvert, you identify as more of a shy person, right? It's tough to get outside of your box. It's tough to really stand up and vocalize for yourself. I understand. I get it. But it's the one point in time that you actually need to do it. You need to tell that employer that you need to hire me because if not, your company is going to suffer for it. Your company needs this. I can do it. Your company needs to solve this problem. I'm a wonderful problem solver. You need to talk about all of these great things that make you great without sounding arrogant, right? You have to promote your skills, be confident, and advocate for yourself without going too far and sounding arrogant. Okay, this is a sales pitch. The employer has a job, the employer has a vacancy. You and everybody else wants to fill that vacancy. So it's a sales pitch. You're selling the employer yourself. You're trying to convince them to hire you because you are great in these areas. Okay, so it is a sales pitch. And as you're talking with the employer, you'll sort of get a general feeling about how well you think this is going. And at the end of the interview, one of the best things that you can always do is sort of ask about a general timeline. And not really pressuring the employer, but just say at the end of it, it was really nice to meet you. Thank you for your time. Do you guys have a general idea as to when you might have a decision made or when you might make an offer to somebody? And if they tell you a week and it's 3 weeks later and you haven't heard anything, then chances are that job is obviously not for you. But it's entirely acceptable to ask an employer what their timeline for decision making is, because you might have other jobs, you might have other offers, and if you're not hearing anything from this employer, it's time to continue your search. But part of what I just said to you really speaks about common courtesy. As you're leaving the interview process, shake the hand of the employer, tell them thank you. People are busy. We take time out of our day to be able to interview people for a variety of different positions. So thank you for your time. Thank you for meeting with me. It was a pleasure talking with you. I hope to hear from you in the future. I hope to be able to work with you very soon in this job, in this position. And do that with absolutely everyone that you encounter that day, from the receptionist to the actual hiring manager, anyone you meet, the janitor, whatever. Be polite to people because you never know who might be connected with who, right? So be polite and treat everybody with the same amount of respect. After the job interview is done, email the hiring manager, send an actual formal thank you note that is handwritten, and just thank everybody again for their time and attention. And even if they might be on the fence about you, right? This is something that shows that you are respectful of them as an individual, you're respectful of the organization, and you are just a sincere person, right? And you might stand out a little bit more than you realize compared to people who didn't even take the time to say thank you or send a follow-up. You're refreshing yourself in the mind of the employer. So it's all about the preparation, and we've talked about it a lot of different ways in which you can prepare for the job interview process, but know that this is not an easy thing to do. There are often a lot of different things that are happening behind the scenes that you guys are not always privy to, especially when we're talking about departments, organizations, government funded types of things. There are a lot of internal politics at play, and a public interview for people outside of the company or outside of the agency might be required, but they might already have somebody that they know they're going to hire, and this is just a formality, okay? And I know that kind of sucks to say that, but it is the truth. There's a lot of internal politicking, especially in CJ related organizations and agencies. It might not always be about the internal politics. Sometimes there might be a better qualified candidate than you. That's okay. Sometimes there's going to be a candidate with more experience than you. That's okay. Sometimes you're just not going to be the right fit for the job, or the job's not going to be the right fit for you, and that's okay too. But the more you interview, the more experience you get, and the better you become at this. Because it is a sales pitch, and to an extent, it is a game that we all have to play. So the more you do it, the better prepared you are for future interviews. And sometimes on that rare occasion, you get super lucky at the beginning and you get that dream job right out the gate, right? You might be a fantastic speaker, you might be great on paper, everything coincides, the planets are all in alignment, and you get that fantastic job right outside the gate. Congratulations for you. That is not the way it always goes. And if it does happen for you, I am stoked for you. But that's not normally the way that it goes, especially for people who are fresh out of college and out of university here. Sometimes, and this is the more common scenario, you have the dream job, you've applied for the dream job, you might not get a call back. You might get a call back for an interview, you never get a call back from that interview, right? So sometimes we watch our dream job sort of flutter away and we're all sad and disappointed, but then sometimes something better comes along. And sometimes, and I hate to say this, sometimes we have to settle for a job for money, right? Because our bills don't pay themselves and we need work. So sometimes the job that you accept is the temporary job. And sometimes the temporary job that you accept turns out to be the dream job, and the universe gave it to you without you knowing about it, right? But my point is here is that job searching is pretty much never an easy feat, okay? If you think you're going to get the first job that you interview at, I'm not going to crush your hopes and dreams. I hope you do get it, but just know that this is often a very daunting process. But really the trick of it is that you just have to be open to new opportunities, and you cannot say, well, a job will come to me, right? You have to go find the job yourself. You have to apply to pretty much anything and everything that is available and hope for the best. And sometimes when you are open to these opportunities, you know, the universe will hand you something that you weren't necessarily looking for, but it turns out to be the best fit for you, and you end up with a really fulfilling career. It might mean that you have to start at the bottom and you have to work your way up. That's fine. That's an expected thing, especially within criminal justice. You're starting low and you got to make your way up the ranks. But if you want to do this type of work, that's what is expected of you. But if you're prepared, you work hard, you stand out among your fellow employees, that's the way you're going to advance in the rankings. The other thing that I would say, as you're being open to these opportunities, even if you're not sure about something, if somebody offers you an interview, still go, right? Because even if it's not the job for you, even if you don't get it, even if you do get it and you end up turning it down, what you have is more interview experience. And when that dream job does come along, you're going to be super prepared for how to dazzle them to be able to get the job that you want. So never say no to any opportunity. And once you take the interview, if you find that it's not for you, then you can say no, but at least you try, right? And that's what I want you guys to do this week. I want you to try, and you're going to test this out, and you're going to engage in mock interviews with career services, and they're going to be the ones who are interviewing you for a more general position, and it's just giving you time to talk about your marketable skills and talk about some of the things that make you stand out as a candidate, so that when the real interview comes, you've already had a go at this and you've already been able to talk about some of the things that I've talked about with you in lecture today. So it's not like you're going in blind. It's not like you're doing this for the very first time. You'll have some sort of experience. You'll be able to work out some of the kinks, and you'll be better prepared for when you meet with the actual employer. So I want you guys to really take this seriously. I want you to prepare. I want you to come up with that little elevator talk. Excuse me, and I want you to be able to advocate for yourself, even if this is a fictional situation. I want you guys to take it seriously and act as though it was real, because one day you're going to be doing this for real, and somebody's going to evaluate you on more than just a grade, right? So with this mock interview, it sort of ends the formal employment section of the semester, and the rest of the term, what we're going to be doing is just focusing on the research components, the projects and the assignments that are related to the grander project of putting together your policy analyses, to an extent, I guess. So as you're making your way through, just know that employment is on the horizon for you, especially as you're leaving school with us. But that for the rest of the semester, the more nuanced focus is going to be exclusively on the research. So this will end our employment lectures. So as always, guys, if you guys have any questions at all for me, get in touch with me. Come see me in office hours. Schedule a Zoom conference with me. I'm happy to help you with whatever you need. The instructions for the mock interviews can be found in this week's module on Canvas. And otherwise, if there's nothing else that you guys need, I will see you next time for our next research lecture. So I hope you guys all have a great and wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.